The alien tech was stolen. Written by AlienTechBlog. It's been 6 months since my last post, and I'm sorry for leaving you guys hanging. But I had very urgent matters that needed my immediate attention. In a series of updates, I'll fill you all in on what happened, but it's going to take some time to achieve that. For now, I'll give you this update, and I'll tell you as much as I can right now. After posting my last update, I was elated to have gotten what I know out there. The night that the last update went up, I slept like a baby. I was so tired. If an earthquake had happened, I would have slept right through it. My brain was so fried from all the excitement and the intensity of what came with owning hardware from another world. Yes, I was absolutely spent. The next day, I woke up around 2:30 p.m. I was still recovering from the events of the previous day, so I pondered the idea of taking an off day, but I knew that I'd likely be right back to working on the foreign technology. With a yawn, I stretched out my limbs as far and as wide as I could. Rolling out of bed, I rubbed my eyes, getting ready for the day. My mouth had that gross taste that you get after a long, undisturbed sleep, so I decided to brush my teeth. Upon exiting my bedroom, I felt a cold breeze. I shivered in response to this out-of-place, unusually chilly stream of air. In my tired haze, I thought that the AC was set too low, so I made my way to the living room. Stumbling exhausted to the thermostat, I saw a sight that made me freeze in my tracks. In an instant, I was completely awake, all because my front door was wide open. I'm already paranoid enough on my own, but when I saw that door swinging in the cold December wind, I became panicked. I rushed to the door, slamming it shut. Like a lunatic, I held my back to the door, scanning the interior of my house with bloodshot eyes. Nothing appeared to be out of order, nor did anything look like it had been taken. I thought that, after Greg slammed my door in a fit of childish anger, he had broken it. I began to calm myself down, running my hand down my face as I shook my head. "That mofo owes me a new door," I said under my breath, making my way to the couch. Just what I needed, a panic attack, right as I got out of bed. I sat on the couch, sinking into the cushions as I slowed my heart rate. Sitting by myself, I thought of how paranoid I was. Yeah, well, I had reason to be. But I also knew that nobody had any idea of what I was doing, aside from Greg. Yes, Greg and I had a history of spats and falling outs, but we still remained friends. I don't know, man. We just had a brotherly bond, even though I had isolated myself from everyone I know. As I began to come back to my senses, my eyes lazily scanned the room. For no apparent reason, I began to get the feeling that something was different. Almost like an itch you can't scratch. The sensation of what you can only describe as misplacement. It began to nag at me even more. Stroking the thin stubble on my chin, my head turned every which way, looking around for the cause of the feeling. Like a truckload of bricks, it came crushing down onto me. "Oh my God!" I shouted, realizing that the bin of alien tech was missing. In a frenzy, I shot up from the couch, flipping it over. My strength enhanced from the adrenaline. "Not there," I mumbled to myself, rushing over to my computer desk. My hands firmly grabbed at the desk, violently pulling it away from the wall. Not there either. Even though I knew that I wasn't going to find the technology anywhere, I still wanted to believe that I had somehow misplaced it. I checked in the kitchen, the bathroom, my own room, even the walk-in pantry. But alas, The equipment was nowhere to be seen. I tried telling myself that I just wasn't right in my mind, that in my sleep-deprived state, I had put the bin of tech somewhere stupid, but I knew in my gut what had really happened. I sprinted back to my room, snatching my phone off the nightstand. Without hesitation, I called my brotherly friend Greg. As I waited for him to answer, I was seething with rage. If I had been standing in front of a mirror, I might have actually seen pure, unfiltered, burning rage seeping from my pores. "Pick up the damn phone. Pick up, pick up, pick up!" I ranted, pacing back and forth while shouting the usual expletives. As soon as I heard the phone call go to voicemail, I threw my phone with the strength of a kicking mule into the wall. Oddly enough, the device didn't shatter into a billion pieces. So I had to hear Greg's annoying, mocking voice.
"I'm probably busy or something. So unless you're my main bitch, don't call me back."
Greg's pre-recorded voice echoed through my room, causing me to burst into a monstrous, earth-shattering tirade. "Greg, bring it back right now! I swear, Greg, if you sold the stuff that I went through hell to get and fix, I will literally throw you in front of an effing truck." The stark contrast of the pleasant, mild beep that sounded after my verbal explosion was almost humorous, and would have been if I wasn't on the cusp of breaking a man's spine in half with my bare hands. Finding what little bearings I had left, I slumped against the wall, letting my weak, strained body slide down to the floor. I felt the most intense, depressing sense of sheer hopelessness. I began to think of all the opportunities that I had with the alien tech, all the fun and exploration that I could have indulged in, and ruminating on it only made it worse. To me, that was rock bottom, and there was no light to be found until a startling noise cut right through the stagnant air. My ears perked up as my head jerked to the direction of the noise. To my surprise, my phone was ringing. Like a sad, diseased rat, I meagerly crawled on my hands and knees to answer the phone. The screen was severely cracked in a spiderweb-like way, but I could make out that the caller was none other than the fuckface of the hour, Greg. With a fist clenched tightly around the broken phone, I answered. "Greg, are you out of your mind? Bring that stuff back here or I'll..." I rambled right before being cut off by a series of loud stammers.
John, please hear me out. Look, I didn't want to do this, but you didn't really give me much of a choice, you know. I gotta get me and my family out of that hellhole, and I know some mofos that sell guns, so they might like this CP shit, right? I'm sorry, man, but you gotta see the big picture. If you want, I'll split it 50-50, okay? Sorry, bro.
Just as I was about to describe the exact manner in which I would end his miserable life, he hung up on me. There aren't words to describe the emotion that I was experiencing. Heck, the closest thing to imagining what I felt would be turning into the sun. My rage was unmatched by the most ruthless, unfeeling, cold, calculated predator in the universe. In short, if Greg was standing in front of me at the time, I would have made him see the most Christian depiction of hell, right from the comfort of my own home. With saliva spewing from behind my clenched teeth, I grunted loudly. Standing up from the sweat-stained carpet, I stormed into the living room, grabbing my car keys off the computer desk, ready to find Greg and swiftly kill him. But then some clarity entered into my insufferable life. I realized that even if I had it in me to drive in the headspace I was in, I had no idea where Greg was going. Granted, I knew where he was. That run-down, gang-riddled, foul-smelling orifice on the face of planet Earth called Pleasant Meadow. Actually, that's an alias that I'm giving it, but it's close to the ironic name that it was given. Anyway, I felt the urge to, quite literally, explode into an atomic fit of rage. But I knew that I had to sit down and think. Calming myself down, I began to think of the days that Greg and I had spent in Pleasant Meadow. We would often go to the local burger joint, which would usually lead to Greg also talking to other regulars, the local gangbangers. From there, he would brag about how he's still on the grind and pushing that whip, but also walking away with the gangbangers, seemingly talking in private. That memory reminded me of an old, mostly forgettable video recording that Greg and I took while at a party. It was like a light bulb had appeared over my head as I, with bated breath, swiveled in my office chair and pulled up Greg's social media. I knew that he posted that old house party video from a few years back, and I was going to find it, even if it meant endlessly scrolling through his brain-dead narcissistic feed. After countless pictures of him holding up a fanned-out handful of $20 bills with the hashtag #StayHungry, I finally found the video. I clicked play, then watched as my old days of awkward socializing began to unfold before me. In the video, Greg had his arm around me, clearly drunk, and he had a dopey smile across his red face.
I just want to say that we are the money gang, homie. John, you feeling this vibe, bruh?
Greg struggled to say, his breath nearly visible on camera.
Come on, Greg, you're drunk. Could you stop being annoying for 1 minute at least?
I replied, looking like I'd rather be anywhere else.
You gotta be feeling this vibe, man. I feel it. Antonio feels it. And hey, speaking of the devil, Antonio, Mr. Man of the House, come and check out the Money Gang.
Greg shouted, waving to someone off camera.
What's good, cousin? You and your boys having a good time?
A muscular, shirtless, bandana-wearing man named Antonio asked.
We're having the time of our lives, bruh. Yo, you got that strap still? I got the money if you've got the shed.
Greg spouted off, seemingly throwing all subtlety out the window. Now that I knew of one illegal firearm transaction, I surmised that Greg would likely stay in contact with the same people, as he always does with his connections. If my hunch was correct, then Greg was on his way to Antonio's house with the alien tech, and I needed to stop him. Luckily for me, Greg doesn't think about the implications that geotagging on social media has on his privacy. Right on that post, Antonio's house address was as plain as day, and all I had to do was take my chances and drive to that location. Determined, I made my way to my car, starting it up and hastily speeding off. The trees whizzed by as I drove a few miles over the speed limit, but I knew the area well enough to know that not many cops patrolled the area. The radio played in the background, mostly excluded by my laser focus on the objective: to get back what's mine. It wasn't until I heard something that related to my predicament that I began to listen.
Have you seen flying saucers? Have you been poked and prodded by little green men from other galaxies? If so, then call in and give us your story.
I felt as though the radio was mocking me, that in some way, the universe was playing a sick joke on me. Heaven hell, dude, I grumbled, about to turn down the radio, until a caller came through with their story. She sounded very serious, straight to the point, and almost rushed.
"Hi, Rick. A few nights ago, I saw this bright light in the sky. At first glance, I thought that it was a star or something. Then it got brighter and brighter, till I could see it moving with my own 2 eyes."
The caller claimed. The sound of children playing in the background could be heard.
"We've been getting calls about this for over a week, ma'am. Lots of folks say that they saw what you described. Hey, ma'am. You sound kind of shaken. Are you doing all right?"
The radio DJ asked, followed by a short length of silence.
"Rick, they're here. Don't you get that? Ain't nobody worried about this. The aliens are here, people. Wake up and see the truth. They're here. And they're gonna..."
Before she could finish her sentence, I switched off the radio. I couldn't believe that aside from me, the police, and the military, other people had seen the ship that crashed into the woods on that fateful night. For me, this whole thing was such a personal, intimate experience. But now I knew that many more people knew of the existence of the craft. I would be lying if I said that this news didn't make me feel a wee bit nervous. I had thoughts like, what if the exposure of this incident draws more government operatives to silence the masses, then, in turn, somehow leads back to me? It was one heck of a stressful drive to Pleasant Meadow. What with all the overthinking that I was doing. All I could think of was Greg handing those criminals the technology. Then, in turn, him babbling all about how he got it. The criminals would then take the tech to the media trying to obtain fame. And if my name came up, I'd be thrown into the back of a black van with a sack over my head. My grip on the wheel tightened as my thoughts became a blur of fear. How could my friend, someone that I've known for years, do this to me? He knew how paranoid I was, how scared I was of the news getting out. I love him like a brother, even though at the time I wanted to eviscerate him. Yes, he was desperate to escape Pleasant Meadow, but he should know better than to blow the lid on one of the biggest secrets in history. I was so caught up in my own head that I almost didn't notice a car right in front of me. Stomping on the brakes, I just barely avoided a serious fender bender. As I sat in awkward silence, waiting for the idling driver ahead of me to scold me, I heard a low, thumping, rhythmic bass. It was the car that I almost hit, its radio blaring. With shifty eyes, I looked at the scenery around me. I was in Pleasant Meadow. "Still a shithole, I see," I remarked, looking at the familiar, worn-down, all but destroyed buildings and roads around me. Annoyed, I looked at the motionless car in front of me. With great impatience swelling up inside of me, I was about to lay on the horn until I noticed that I was at a stoplight. How could I possibly forget Pleasant Meadow traffic? I said to myself in a sarcastic, bitter tone. As I waited for the green light, tapping my fingers on the wheel, I heard a noise that made me jump up in my seat. To my relief, it was my phone's ringer once again. Just like the last time, the man that I considered a friend was calling me, and I was hoping that he had had a change of heart, about to tell me that he was returning the tech. However, I got a much different call. "Greg, I'm in town. You better give me that stuff back," I growled, sounding like a disgruntled single parent going through a messy divorce.
Hey, your homeboy is talking some BS about this garbage he's scamming us with.
An unknown male voice replied. Whoa. Who the F are you? Where's Greg?" I shot back, forgetting all about the world around me.
None of your effing business, bitch. Listen up, your boy messed with the wrong team of shooters, and he's about to get his ass laid out. So you might want to come and explain yourself, homie.
My stomach was churning violently. My head was spinning, and I could feel my heart in my throat. Hey man, Greg's not right in his mind, okay? Please, just let him go. I'll pay you whatever I have, if it sweetens the deal. I stammered, trying my best to use my quick thinking to my advantage.
Boy, you got me effed up if you think I'm gonna let this disrespect fly. Come to our place if you want to see your friend without a cap in his dome.
After that, the man gave me the address before abruptly hanging up. You know, as much as I was pissed off at Greg's blatant disregard for my wishes to keep this ordeal a secret, I still cared for him. I couldn't help but think of the times that he had my back. The time when he punched out a bully who was trying to punk me at school. The time that he was my wingman for a girl who obviously wasn't into me. And the time that he and his mom actually went to the trouble of baking my sick father a birthday cake. Yes, Greg is an ignorant dope with the stubbornness of a mule, but he's a good person on the inside. "The light's green, asshole!" a woman shouted from behind my car. Shaking my head and readjusting my sights on the road ahead, I began to drive to Greg's location. As I drove, I tried to ease my nerves with some radio, only to be met with the same conspiracy-laden station from before.
Furthermore, the craft didn't have a tail, Rick. You think that whole meteor story stands up to scrutiny? I have never seen the Army respond to a meteor strike.
A male caller argued, irritation in his voice. Grumbling, I turned off the radio, tired of hearing what I already know. My thoughts were with my friend and what his fate would be if I couldn't get there in time. Would he be dead by the time that I arrived? I just couldn't get that idea out of my head. Snapping back to reality, I was pulling up to the house where Greg was being held captive. Lucky for me, the guy decided to call me because this was not Antonio's address at all. Maybe Greg was actually finding new connections. Good for him, I guess. Cautiously, I stepped out of my car, seeing that Greg's dad's car was in the driveway. "Yo!" a voice shouted from the side of me. Before I could get a good look at the person, I got a better view of the butt of a pistol. And then, nothing at all. Sniffling, I began to stir from my deep, almost comatose slumber. My skull felt like it was about to crack open from the pressure inside of it. My limbs were weak, and my hands were shaky. I could feel all of that, but I couldn't see a thing. "He's awake," a muffled male voice bellowed. "What the?" I murmured before being manhandled onto my feet. The sensation of something being yanked from my head aggravated the migraine, making me whimper like a frightened chihuahua. Suddenly, my vision was filled with dull yellow light. I couldn't quite make out how many people were there in front of me, given that I was seeing double and only able to perceive the outlines of human-like figures. John, they're gonna kill us, man. I don't want to die." I heard a familiar voice cry, followed by a loud, meaty, thwacking sound that silenced the voice. "Shut up, bitch," another voice demanded through what sounded like gritted teeth. Money. I have money," I croaked out, unable to think of anything else. Without warning, I felt a sharp, deep, aching pain radiate through my abdomen, buckling my already weak legs. Two pairs of hands held up my rag doll of a body, sloppily standing me upright. I thought that I had been stabbed until my sight began to clear up. Looking down, there was no stab wound. But looking back up, I could see a tall, jacked man with broad shoulders. He was wearing a ski mask, just like the other thugs in the room, and rearing back his fist. Please don't," I pleaded through garbled speech before being punched viciously in the stomach. My insides were on fire. I thought I was going to lose yesterday's dinner before taking in what breath I could and being brought back to my feet once again. "We don't need your money, boy. We want to know what you two mark-ass bitches are trying to pull with this alien BS." The large, intimidating man demanded, threatening to hit me again. I could see Greg on the floor in front of me, bleeding from his nose, spitting more blood from between his swollen lips. He looked so pathetic, but not in an insulting way. I pitied him. I must have looked no better, judging from how I felt. "You gonna speak, or am I gonna have to knock some more sense into that big-ass head of yours?" the man said again. Seeing Greg look the way he did, the overbearing stress of the past week, and now all of this nonsense, I was beginning to feel less weak and more furious. You want to know the truth?" I retorted, looking that big, hairy man right in his eyes. "I'll tell you the truth then, big man. Bring me the stuff that Greg brought you, and I'll show you." With all this trouble that the alien tech had brought me, I was prepared just to prove that it was the real deal and give it to them. Maybe it was the concussion, but I had a major change of heart. If giving them the alien technology meant that I could rest and that Greg and I could live, then I would gladly hand it over. "Rod, bring that stuff over here," the muscular man barked into the other room. Being laid out before me was the very technology that I swore to protect, fix, and keep hidden from the world. As I gazed, likely for the last time, at my once prized collection of foreign hardware, my eyes searched for the one piece of tech that could instantly prove its legitimacy: the chrome ball. Pouting my dry lips, I took a large gulp of congealed blood and saliva, still looking for that magical, levitating spear. Wait, where is it?" I muttered, my eyes darting side to side, desperately trying to find the dense metal ball. "I'm losing patience," the huge, ripped man told me. Looking over to Greg with wide eyes, a panicked expression on my face, and snot dribbling out of my nose, I slowly opened my mouth. "Greg, where is it? The floating ball, remember?" Greg lifted his head, tears still dripping from the tip of his crooked nose. "I don't know, man. That's what I was trying to tell them, but they wouldn't listen to me, man. They just started beating me when I couldn't find it." Greg sobbed, lowering his head back to the floor. "Greg, what, you don't have a gun?" I replied. "I couldn't do it, man. I couldn't pull the trigger," he said. Out of nowhere, a sharp, loud clacking noise sounded off. Right in front of me, the big, tattooed man was holding a pistol, pointing it straight at my head. It's weird. When you have a gun aimed at your skull, you don't see much else around you, except for the barrel. "You mofos are getting on my last nerve. I'm not playing these games no more. Prove this shit's real, and I don't blow your ass right to the Lord's kingdom," he growled. My mind raced for solutions, and it wasn't until I looked down at the alien computer that I thought of something. "Oh, okay. Look, bring me that computer, please," I begged, the sweat from my brow stinging my open wounds. With the gun still aimed at my head, the large man swept the computer over to me with his foot. "You already showed us this shit," he growled again. "Well, I know how to use it," I replied. Let go of my arms and I can tell you that this is real, okay? If I try to run or fight, you can shoot me and Greg right in the face." Upon finishing that sentence, Greg looked up at me with an even more terrified expression, but it worked. The big man nodded to his buddies, allowing them to let me go. With slow, deliberate movements, I carefully sat down on the floor, booting up the computer. Sure, the computer usually took a bit to start, but when you know a gun is trained on you, ready to fire at any time, the thing feels like it takes an eternity to start up. Finally, the alien computer booted up to the menu. Trying to focus as hard as I could, I navigated to the most interesting screen on the computer, the thing that I like to call the universal map. Just like last time, I could see the square plane and countless circles, and the hundreds, if not thousands, of square icons drifting about. "Ha ha! Now that's something we didn't see," the huge man exclaimed, lightening the atmosphere of the room, but only a little. Now, you may be asking yourself, what is your plan to prove to them that this is real, beyond a cool-looking display? Well, my plan was simple. Select one of those triangular icons, then, unlike in my last update, actually choose that mysterious, indecipherable option. I was basically banking mine and Greg's life on this option doing something remarkable. Taking a deep breath, I did just that, and was returned to the standard map view. My nervous grin was gradually turning into a worried, panicked frown. I waited for something, anything to happen, but there was nothing. The atmosphere of the room was reverting back to a deathly serious mood. I thought that my vision was going to switch to pure blackness, due to a bullet ripping through my brain. But something did in fact happen on the screen. A rapid, repetitive, dull beeping sound began coming from the computer, followed by the triangle that I selected zooming out of view. The big man, along with his crew, leaned in to look at the screen, but then the display turned off. Without making too many sudden movements, I pressed the power button multiple times, praying that it would just turn back on, but it didn't. Not wanting to accept defeat, I kept at it, but was dragged from the computer by two strong men. I was forced onto my knees, staring up in sheer terror, only seeing the barrel of a gun. The big man was saying something, but I couldn't register what it was. I could hear Greg weeping loudly, so they must have been doing the same to him. I thought for sure that our lives were over, and I had even begun to accept it. With no bang, no muzzle flash, my vision was engulfed by pitch blackness. For a second, I thought that I was dead, until the lights came back on. The thugs looked at each other with confused faces, almost shrugging it off as a minor power outage. But then, there was this high-pitched, deafening noise that enveloped the whole room. By the look on their faces, I could tell that the thugs were screaming from the noise and confusion. But I couldn't hear anything, except for the shrill sound. The lights began to flicker rapidly. I could see a cell phone on a chair start to turn on before instantly shutting back off. And the ceiling fan above was spinning so fast it was rocking itself out of the ceiling. I couldn't understand what was happening, and to be honest, I was too numb to react. I just sat there, sluggishly looking around the room as the thugs and Greg panicked. Everyone was scattering all around the room, but were stopped in their tracks by a light rumbling. The light rumble graduated to a deep, heavy shaking of the whole house. The ceiling fan came crashing down onto one of the thugs, followed by cracks forming along the walls near the ceiling. For some reason, my self-preservation instincts finally kicked in, causing me to spring into action. It was hard to stand up straight or even walk, but I had to get out of there somehow. Maybe it was the constant ringing in my ears that was throwing off my equilibrium, the house's tremors, the injuries that I had sustained, or even all of the above, but I kept falling over. Greg had curled up in the corner, covering his head with his hands, and I tried to make my way over to him, but my legs were fighting against me. No matter how loud I screamed, no matter how much I tried to get his attention, Greg couldn't hear me. Pulling myself up from the floor, using a chair, I noticed the alien tech, and I knew that I had to get it out of there. When I knew that the thugs were no longer a threat, I felt the old sense of determination surge throughout my body. With what little strength I could muster, I grabbed all of the tech, tossing it into the bin. Carrying the bin with sore arms and wobbly legs, I staggered over to Greg. I kept tapping him on the head to get his attention, but he wouldn't respond. Greg just stayed in a fetal position, quivering like a small, horrified child. Without warning, the room was drenched in the most intense and most blinding light that I have ever witnessed. I didn't think, I just ran as best I could. With my vision heavily impaired, I was bumping into things that I could barely see, causing me to stumble and almost fall over again. As the light became less intrusive, I knew that I was almost out of the way of whatever was coming for us. Eventually, I burst out the front door, clearing the stairs in a single bound. I ran as far away as I could from that house until my legs finally gave out completely. Still in a panic, I flipped over onto my back, and that's when I saw the most amazing but horror-inducing thing that I've ever seen in my whole life. The house no longer had a roof, and above it, there was a large, round, bright object hovering. My hearing was returned to me, so I had to endure the blood-curdling screams from those who were still inside the house. The levitating object made no sound at all, and was seemingly producing a dense beam of light from what I assume was the bottom of it. My eyes were unblinking as I witnessed the silhouettes of people being dragged up into the object by the light. I was in awe, unable to move and unable to truly think. As the last silhouette was sucked into the object, the screams finally ceased, and in an instant, the object shot up 90 degrees and vanished without a trace into the night sky. I was left without any sense of self for about a minute, until I snapped back to reality, clumsily scurrying back onto my feet. I didn't have time to ponder what I had just witnessed, so I grabbed the bin of tech, then sprinted to my car with my exhausted, aching legs. Much of that drive was a blur in my memory, but I do recall the feeling of dread rearing its ugly head, and that's about it. The next thing I know, I'm back home unloading the bin from the back seat and walking to my front door. It was like I was on autopilot, even when I let my body hit the bed, almost breaking the springs in the mattress. That night, I didn't remember my dreams, feeling worried, sad, angry, or anything really. No, all I could remember after I lay on that bed was a tingling throughout my extremities. The next morning, I woke up with a gasp, sitting straight up, almost as if I was having a nightmare. If I was, I don't remember them. I could feel sweat pouring down my forehead, and it had also stained my sheets. It was then that I began to feel the effects from last night. As I sat in my soaked bed, I began to cry uncontrollably. "I'm sorry, Greg. God," I shrieked, throwing the covers off in my hysterics. The sobbing carried on for a while, as all of the emotions that I couldn't feel before started flooding my very being. Hyperventilating, I got out of bed, careful not to topple once more, and I walked into my living room. Still wearing my dirty, moist, sticky clothes from yesterday, I began to lazily strip them off right then and there. I don't know what was wrong with me, but everything felt off. It was so strange seeing myself do these impulsive things and not being able to, or not caring enough, to stop it. Well, there I was, naked in my living room, staring out my window. It was a sunny, windy, beautiful day, but in my world, it was storming wildly. I was present, yet blank on the inside. The sun filled my retinas with its warm glow, but it had no effect on me. No, the only thing that made me react was seeing a very bright, very still, very round object in my front yard. As slow and stiff as a living corpse, I walked outside to see what it was. But deep down, I knew what it was. Lo and behold, the chrome ball was there, floating in the sun. That thing always reminded me of the crashed spacecraft that I plundered, but now it made me want to wince, or even recoil at the sight of it. Like nothing could catch my interest anymore. I raised my hand behind it, casually guiding it through the open door. Putting the chrome ball back in the bin, I thought of how Greg must have accidentally dropped it as he was stealing the tech. The thought gave me a faint, wholesome chuckle. Then I thought of how in my panic, I chose the technology over a friend of mine. He was petrified, feeling the most terror that he had ever experienced in his life, and I ran off with this bin of curses. The void that inhabited my soul was replaced by a raging fire of self-hatred. I screamed and I punched a hole in the wall. That fire inside of me was burning a hole through my ego, letting me see who I really was. What I saw was a coward, a cheat, a liar, and an unreliable pile of trash. Just then, I thought of taking the bin, setting it ablaze, and never having to look at it again. But that rage, that need for retribution, it gave me an idea. I thought of the possibility that, no matter how unlikely, I could use their equipment against them. What if I could weaponize these high-tech pieces of hardware to get back at the things that took my friend away? Hell, maybe I could even save him from the craft if he's not already dead. With that new mindset in place, I made my plans to get back to work. Alright, that's all I can say for now. Stay tuned for more updates, because in the span of being gone for 6 months, a lot more has happened in my life. Until then, just please stay safe. It's a nasty world of unknown danger, and I should know that better than anyone else. Good night.